you're sitting in the chair. I told you you'd be sitting in this chair.
You did say it. I don't believe any of those things, though. I mean, you know, it's like, what are the chances of that actually happening?
How do you feel?
I'm still sort of trying to wrap my mind around it. You know, I grew up doing this, and I was in Les Miserables on Broadway when I was a little kid. And, you know, at that point, you sort of, you know, you watch the Tonys, and you're like, that's a dream. Like, I'm going to be up there one day, and I'll say my speech. And then you get older, and you realize how hard it is just to get a job, let alone to get a job in a good show, let alone for that show to be on Broadway, let alone for that show on Broadway to be considered for Tonys or, you know, anything like that. And the chances are so slim. And then, you know, I am absolutely aware of how difficult it is, what the chances are. And so I had sort of written it off as a fantasy that doesn't happen to people like me, that happens to Audra McDonald and, you know, and Hugh Jackman, and that's, you know, that's who gets to do that, and that's totally fine. I'm totally accepting of that. And so I've sort of mourned the loss that this would never happen, even this time through, even after some of the other awards had been announced. I just sort of mourned the loss that this isn't in the cards for me, and it's okay. And watching the telecast, of course, I nonetheless had heart palpitations because I'm, you know, a neurotic Jewish kid, and, you know, watching in the morning, and I was so thrilled, you know, that Jesse got nominated and our book writer Doug, and, you know, and the show, you know, that really means more than anything, I think, to all of us, is that the show is nominated, because what we do is such a team sport, and the show being nominated represents all of our contributions, and so that means so much. And then, of course, I'm just sweating and freaking out when my category finally comes, and naturally my name is Spector, so it's last as they're announcing in alphabetical order, and then they said it, and I just went berserk. I mean, my fiance Kelly Barrett screamed so loud, I think she has to go to the ear, nose, and throat doctor. I screamed, and we were just running around the apartment and jumping and hugging and being like lunatic children on Christmas morning. And then they did the next category, the very last category, which was supporting female, and you know, they announced Anika Larson's name, and she and I we do this together, you know, every night, and so that meant so much that we get to come and do all of this and be on this journey together, as we have been, you know, sort of hand in hand since the first day of rehearsal.
My final question.
Yeah.
Being on Broadway, what it means to you?
You know, it's the pinnacle of theater in our country, and in some ways in the world, and, you know, everybody looks to Broadway. So, you know, it's two worlds. You know, the one is, I go to work every day like you would in any theater on earth. You go to work and you do your job. That's your job, is to go on stage, no matter whether there's 10 people or 1,000, or, you know, some Midwest theaters 5,000. You know what I mean? You go into your job, and then there's stuff like this where you're like, wow, this is bigger than I realize it is, day after day. But there's also sort of the wonderful aspect that when you walk a block away from the theater, you're in Times Square and nobody knows who you are. You just get to sort of go about your life. So, you know, it's this wonderful, you know, dichotomy of being on stage and being you know, what your family thinks that you're a star, and then you walk a block down the avenue and you're just, you know, a kid on the street walking to the subway. And so it means everything in both ways. You know, it's so nice to be able to, you know, to be on the biggest stage of all theaters, and you know, and to be at the Tony Awards, and to have any recognition like this whatsoever is so just beyond imagining. But you also get to be normal, so it's really cool.